You're muted. Go ahead. I'm not gonna. It's been a day. Hopefully everyone can hear us now.
Right. Welcome to everybody.
Thank you, Jen.
This is the Mattacheese Utilization Committee regular meeting of September 11th, 2025. And we are convening here in Conference Room A at the Yarmouth Town Hall. I'm calling the meeting to order, and this is a hybrid meeting, which meet via Zoom. Also, because we have members on Zoom, I need to make it a roll call. So is John Anderson here? Andrew Laird is not here, and he had a prior commitment. So Barbara Levowing, Lindsay Petro,
Here.
Joe Potska.
Here.
Thank you, Joe. Casey Schmidt,
Here.
Roby Whitehouse.
Here.
Thank you all. And does anyone have public comment before we start our agenda items? Anyone on Zoom? All right, our first agenda item is our recreation land uses, and we are very fortunate to have two guests today. Mary Vilbon is the director of the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce, and Paul, thank you, is the CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. And they've asked to be here to explain their interests in the Mattacheese site. They participated in land use meetings that we had earlier this year, but they also wanted to catch up and talk a little bit more. So I'm going to let you go and start with Mary.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for having us. I would like to just mention that I have two board members here with the Chamber, Ann Millette and David Botting. David was actually part of the Economic Development Group, and so was Paul. We were very happy that he was able to participate, because I think the Cape Cod Chamber's perspective brings a lot to this conversation when you're thinking about the use of this property from a regional standpoint and the benefit that it could bring to all of Cape Cod, not just Yarmouth. But also, I think from the Chamber standpoint, we would love to see something that has an economic driver in town. We have many businesses that are not seasonal that could benefit that happens on that site that's year round. We know that there's definitely a community need for recreation. Steve Reynolds with the Recreation Department and I work very closely together. So we continue to see the need here in the community for something. But we think there could be a nice balance of something that meets the needs of the community, but also something that meets the needs of the region overall. Many of our families, and I know Paul will speak to this, is many of our families travel off Cape on a regular basis to go to sports facilities so their families can participate in activities. Number one, we're taking our families off Cape. It's a demand for them, when we could be bringing families here that could be spending money in our communities, staying in our hotels, going to our restaurants. And again, it's not a seasonal thing. It would be something that would be year round and a benefit to the town. So we just really want to continue the conversation. And I know you're looking at 3 different possibilities for the site, and we're hoping that this would be one that you would consider.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, from the Cape Cod Chamber's perspective, just to put it in context, for a number of years now, the Chamber's been interested in finding larger event space. There are a lot of events that could come to the Cape that don't come now because we don't have large enough meeting space. The largest meeting space that we do have is in Hyannis at the Emerald Resort Conference Center, and that's going away next year. So the bad situation has gotten worse for us. And so the Chamber's put over the last 20 years, I think, a lot of time and effort into looking at sort of event spaces and event centers. But what we don't need on the Cape is a 5,000 seat arena. What we don't need is a $100 million performing arts. Those would be just difficult to sustain year round, such a seasonal economy. But we do need a larger meeting space. What has happened over the last really 5 years has been this sort of boom in these sporting events and sporting event spaces like Game On or Four Kicks. You see them, they're popping up all over the place. Matter of fact, the governor's conference on travel and tourism in Springfield this year, the lunch speaker was all about sort of sporting facilities, because the business plans are just taking off now. When you look at what parents pay to put their kids into some of these camps and sports, it's become very lucrative. Currently, we have 4,000 families that cross the bridge on a regular basis to take their kids to sporting events. And that is the worst. It's not economic development. When you have money that's earned in your community, you're taking it to spend in other communities, you're losing. What we would like to do is reverse that and see the opposite. So we put some time and effort looking for a location for something that could be one of these sporting facilities / an event space. And we've spent time in Framingham and Rhode Island and Taunton, touring some of the facilities that exist out there and taking a look at them. And we think this concept could really work. A larger event space that also could double as a sports facility that would be busy 24/7. And in many of these communities, these facilities almost have a Main Street type feel inside, with sort of retail and restaurants. They're open, they're walking tracks. Members of the community are in there every day participating. So when we heard about the Mattacheese property, 70 acres, pretty close to the Mid-Cape Highway in the Mid-Cape area, that clearly was a site that to us said, hey, we should probably take a look at this. Because there is a lot of room out there, even for a facility like this. And from our perspective, my experience, my experience is spent 10 years at the Cape Cod Commission. Prior to that, I was assistant town manager in Barnstable. And when you go through these processes of looking at public property or public lands, you want to get as much community input as possible. A lot of times what happens is people want to do a lot of different things. And then you get a lot of different proposals that come in for the site. We think this proposal is consistent with a lot of the other potential uses out there. And we see this as something that would have a direct community impact. A lot of times you're going to get a lot of suggestions for community centers and things like this, but those are things that are going to require ongoing, municipal revenue sources on an annual basis. You have to fund these things every year. This, I think, is a different scenario. I think you have property that's underlying. The town could offer up through our RFP process a ground lease to anyone who was interested in building a facility. And in return for that ground lease, the town could get use of the facility so that you don't have those ongoing annual costs associated with a community center, but you get all the benefits of a community center. And one that will be brand spanking new. So we see that as a real sort of benefit detriment analysis. I think every consideration that comes through this group, you've got to weigh what are the community benefits and then what are the community costs really going forward. A lot of the facilities that we've seen have housing on site or very, very adjacent to it. So sort of housing is clearly consistent with the uses out there. So we think this is something that should make a short list at least as a consideration, because I think it's consistent with some of the other uses that you've heard about, and it's something that will cost, I think, have the highest community benefit with the lowest community cost. And we think that this could happen. So what we're going to do at the chamber right now is we're going to spend $15,000 to update the 2014 report, which I believe is on your website, so that we can provide as much information as possible to the town, to this committee, prior to you making any decisions, final decisions or recommendations to the select board. There are two other sites, a facility like this really needs to be in the Mid-Cape area. It's kind of Barnstable and Yarmouth are the primary communities. The closer it is to the Mid-Cape Highway, the better it would be for the entire region. One of the potential sites is not in one of those two towns and not close to the Mid-Cape Highway, so they all have, different pros and cons. But I think this is a special opportunity for the town. If we can, when you look at sort of sporting events, sporting tournament, that tournament season, actually, the slow time for them is our busy time. So they're busy for the rest of the year. If we could bring tournaments into this town in January and put people in these hotel rooms in January, you will see a significant increase in your commercial tax rate. And especially when you're starting to do projects like wastewater, and you're looking for additional resources to do that. You can only tax people so much, or tax businesses so much. At some point, you really have to look proactively on how to grow your economy. And from an economic perspective on the Cape, we build, whether it's roads or wastewater, we build all infrastructure for peak flow, which is basically 4 or 6 weeks a year. So we're overbuilding infrastructure for the rest of the year. To the extent that we can get economic activity here in the off season, we're maximizing that infrastructure that we've already built and paid for. It's not going to require new infrastructure, but it will stimulate the commercial tax revenue locally. So for those reasons, we think it's an important thing for the committee to discuss and to consider. We hope it makes a short list. We are going to update that report, and we're here and available to provide any information you feel you might need going forward on this particular topic.
Well, I appreciate both of you coming here and opening yourself to questions. I hope you wouldn't mind.
No, that's the best part.
And so I'll start for those members that are online. And do you have any questions that you would like to ask either of our members here? And I see we also have Heather from our consulting group and Jeff. Hi, Joe. Go ahead.
Is you're supporting a regional facility that's going to support tournament play?
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
That level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And your idea is to sublease it to a private owner and with strings attached for the local community.
Yes.
That sounds like what you're both. I just wanted to get just to that.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate characterization, Joe.
Okay. That's all I have for questions right now.
All right. How about anybody else online? Any questions? Roby?
No, I'm all
Okay.
set. Thank you.
All right, Casey? All right, and my consultants, you're always welcome to ask anything you want. So, John, any questions?
You mentioned a place in Hyannis that Cape is losing.
Yes.
Do you have a timeline on
I think we have about 12 months left, 12 to 18 months. That parcel is a larger parcel, so part of it's been sold to the Riverview School, and they're going to develop housing on it. The parcel that's been sold is that part that transects the existing big meeting space there at the Emerald Resort, which really, when you get down to it, used to be an indoor tennis court, and that's the biggest space that we have. And we are going to lose that. And I know that Jack has plans to try to rebuild some space on the other side. But even that limits the kind of events.
what's it hold?
It depends how it's set up. If it's a round tables, I think it's like 500 people, but you can probably put a couple thousand in there, 2,000 for other events. I think you have other opportunities too at Mattacheese. I know that there's you've got the auditorium, which I think has value long term. And so if it's part of a larger facility, that was gonna replicate the basketball courts. To give them a new, better space. You could potentially incorporate that into design, increase the number of seats in the auditorium and really turn that into a performance center.
And then I'd be curious, like the update to the 2014.
Yeah.
The plan or assessment, I guess. Do you have like a sense of confidence? So say we do this, right? We build this, we bring these tournaments in, that there'll be enough hotel rooms available?
Yeah, I
Year
mean,
round.
that's the upside. That's the upside for Yarmouth. There's approximately 10,000 hotel rooms on the Cape, but 1,200 of them in Yarmouth.
3,000.
Yeah, we have more than
3,000, sorry.
that.
How many of those are currently year round today?
So I was thinking about that today. I think 5 of our hotels stay open year round, but I've talked to several of the property owners. And if they knew that there was a demand, they would open. But right now, there's not
Yeah,
enough
sure.
demand, so it doesn't make financial sense for them. And I can tell you, and this is probably the biggest conversation Steve and I have during the year is, you know, a perfect example is the Senior Softball League. They just had their tournament last week. They brought 1,300 people here during the week. And I met many of them in the visitor center when they came into town. You know, they're from Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. They're thrilled to be here on the Cape. If they have the appropriate fields here in Yarmouth, we could bring up to 4,000 people for that tournament. So think about what that would do to the economy for that 1 week in September, right? We've just finished the peak season and then it just continues on. And I think when we build it, they will come. I really do. I think the demand is there and I think Paul's data will be able to show that, and what he's been able to provide to us is very promising.
Yeah, if you look at what Sandwich does with their BMX track out there, BMX rallies, and I mean, they bring in thousands of people for that. And they're people that otherwise probably wouldn't be coming to the Cape. And when you look at even the Hyannis Youth and Community Center, when they do a figure skating tournament, you know, they can put up upwards of 10,000 people in that area for that event. So I think we have examples on Cape of how facilities like this, sporting facilities, can draw.
Barbara?
So, I'm not familiar with a lot of this stuff, so maybe Steve has some answers too. The 4,000 kids that you say, is that a pretty consistent year in, year out number? And the follow-up to that is beyond the kids, when you say things like the senior softball and so forth and so on. I mean, how many people are we talking that could potentially use this facility September to June, not even, you know, not considering already the peak season, which we know would be busy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I could give you 2 examples for this week alone. Second summer cycle is happening in town on Sunday. For the first time, they have 500 cyclists coming to Yarmouth, starting and ending in Yarmouth. So again, if there's a prime location that they can build their event, that would be one. And the town and the chamber has been working with US Rowing, and they just had an event here in Yarmouth last week. And they're actually looking right now at bringing an Olympic qualifying event here next year. Again, that's on the off season. So the event organizers are looking to the Cape, but they need the space. And that will just allow us to almost invite them here, you know, contact them and let them know the facility's here.
So, again, just correct me because I'm not familiar with it. We build it, we lease it to a company that they then become in charge of what events come into the community. They promote all those events and so forth. And then the town of Yarmouth would perhaps in our agreement have some kind of a, you know, special, you know, members, residents or whatever, special access or whatever. But they would still have to pay for that access, correct?
I think it's all negotiable, and really what you'd be negotiating is a ground lease, as part of the RFP. But in that, if I were negotiating for the town, I'd say you'd want your residents to have access, if not free, at a significantly discounted rate, to the facility. And you want your rec programs to have access to courts. And, there could be outdoor fields. I mean, the indoor facility is important. That makes it a year-round facility. But access to fields, I think all of that can be negotiated as part of a ground lease. I mean, there's tremendous value in a ground lease in your negotiations with a private company, because it really takes the land costs out of that development. So, I think the town would be in good shape to negotiate all of that. And I would just to follow up on Mary's point, the Game On facility in Framingham, for example, has 1,200 parking spaces. And they're full every weekend, and they charge $10 a space to park people there. So now they have 6 soccer fields in the ring with Framingham State, but these facilities can be, I think, as busy as you want them.
And again, my follow would be the impact of traffic and that kind of population on, we are 25,000, give or take, a small community, so the impact on traffic. We just got rid of them.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
I'm just, so curious.
I think traffic would be the number one sort of issue that you want to mitigate. But I think part of the beauty of the site is the access comes really right off of Route 7, and you're really not going through residential neighborhoods in order to do that. So that's what makes this site attractive. Obviously, the community college site, they have 26 acres over there, attractive for the same reason. They already have the parking, and the site doesn't go through residential neighborhoods.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
You weren't thinking the town was going to be building this facility.
No.
Right. I just want to be clear, because you made it sound, the town would not.
You would incorporate whoever wins builds it.
Yeah, and I think what you would want to consider is sort of a public-private partnership, so that you have a seat at the table. I mean, the town might even want to see, as part of the selection of tournaments and events that come. Some input there, at least knowledge of what's coming in, and when.
Lindsay? Any questions? Okay. Would you like to ask a question?
I would.
Okay.
Well, first, I would just like to make a comment that there are residential neighborhoods right across the street from there. I being in one of them, and I'm very concerned with the amount of traffic that it sounds like it would bring. I just wanted to say that.
Sure.
My question though is, would this impact the water that is nearby? Like, isn't the town water supply right there?
There's drinking water wells there.
So I'm just curious if that would affect the water supply. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I don't think it could. A lot of this 70 acres, a lot of it is unbuilt for that reason. Instead of going from a lot of protection areas like that have to be protected.
The entire site's a zone 2. So it all contributes to our wells. I think how it's designed would need to be very thoughtful. The stormwater management, the runoff from the parking lots, all of those things. And obviously, we all know the nitrogen problem that we have here in the town of Yarmouth. Discussions about extending sewer to that area, and possibly adjoining neighborhoods as well, if you're interested to connect in, so that if we're combining something like the sports facility with some housing, we're going to need to bring sewer to the site. So there's a bunch of different things that can go into it, and also the type of fertilizer that gets used on the fields can be talked about. I don't know the impacts of synthetic fields, or whether this would just be a natural turf fields. All of those things we could put in the RFP of saying, when you develop it, these are the standards we expect you to adhere to when you're developing.
But it's in zone 2.
It's in zone 2.
Yeah, so they would be restricted, because they're in a zone 2. So there's certain things you can do, certain things you can't.
David?
Yes.
Good, thank you. So I'd first like to start, I'm not anti-business by any sense of imagination. But there's a right place for everything. And the concept that you're talking about, I love, but the area that you're talking about is extremely fragile. And We just talked about the wells, this hunting back there. There's a lot going on in that area that maybe most of you are aware of. Some of you may not be. You can't undo that. We talked about the fertilizers and, you know, when you talk about the softball fields, both our girls played softball, tournaments all over the place. Great time. But most of them have lights. I don't know, you're talking about lights and stuff. Now you're talking about ambient pollution. There's many things that are gonna ripple to talk about this. And that road that you say it is easy. Exit 72, boom, boom, you're right there. You go past the road, one lane in, one lane out. 1,200 cars, that's a lot of vehicles. And it's bad enough just when when the school lets out. Now all of a sudden you're putting 1,200 vehicles in there. Again, I'm not anti-business, but I don't know if this location is falls under the good space that you're really looking for. And there are other spaces that, you know, in town that you might want to consider. I think you talked about some of them, but selfishly, I don't want to see that glow over Horse Pond at night, and might be 5, 6, 7 years. How does people try? We've all heard it before, where people scratch their heads. How did that water supply? There's 3 wells back there, I believe. Okay? The other 2 are closer to it, where Horse Pond ends. That's hot water, and you're putting 1,200 people. There's going to be water use. Okay, if you have a drought or two, I don't know where the water's going to come from to supply that. So those are my concerns.
I
Thank
think
you, David.
if I could answer
Sure.
a little bit of the water, I think it's exactly what Paul was saying about the infrastructure is built for our peak summer. So the water system has an average daily demand, and we would probably be able to handle that in the off season much more readily. If it were a case where we were adding this on in the summer season, you're absolutely right. That may be too much for our system over time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say all of those things would need to be addressed, and then the community would have to be confident that any potential negative impacts were mitigated by the design. But it's also, I mean, part of the reality of the reason we don't have a facility already is that 86% of the property on the Cape is either already developed or protected. It is difficult to site anything anywhere on the Cape because it's finite. So it might be that we just don't get these kind of things in the future, and we're kind of stuck where we are. But that in and of itself is going to create issues, especially issues of affordability long term.
And I love the concept. I really do. Again, I told that girls field hockey, softball, the whole 9 yards. But it's just the wrong spot. It is legitimately just the wrong spot to do what you want to do.
Sure. No, and I understand that, but the reality is also any spot we pick is going to be the wrong spot.
The area by the dump. The field by the dump. I mean, there's land trade-off. I mean, you have less residential housing, you have more lanes of travel. I mean, there's, and trust me.
Yeah.
I understand, your point, your perspective, you have your chamber, you have a group you're trying to protect. I totally understand that, but the people that live in and around there, the people that are, here, that are gonna suffer on that. It might not be 2 years, might be 3 years, but there's a lot going on the bike path. You're gonna have to enlarge that road. You just spent a ton of money putting the bike path in. Again, I don't have the answers that you're presenting. I don't have a piece of property saying go here, but where you're talking about, it's gonna have an effect that is not gonna be positive to the people that are here.
Well, one of the things that Kathy's already mentioned is the whole process that the town is going through for water to be into sewage. And all in phases. I happen to live in a phase that I'm number 8, so I may not be living by the time they get to me. But the fact that I would probably say most likely it's a multi-use site. So it's not just going to be what you just heard. Their hope is that it's going to be size enough that it could provide an event center that occasionally can be used, rented out, that helps support the developer that builds it to get his money back and to get himself a profit. But it also provides what the community is asking for, things to do for their children here on the Cape, things to do for adults here on the Cape. There's a lot of good things that can come of it. I think Paul and Mary are asking those that see it as an issue in terms of the water. I think it's a plus, because I think it'll help you bring wastewater to you sooner in terms of sewerage. And I think with housing, you can apply for grant money. And I think this would help the town in terms of monies not having to be provided by their taxpayers, but rather through grants to get design money for how we lay the road, how we get the main trunks of the wastewater to us without asking the taxpayers for money, that it becomes part of the solution to some of that. And when you have that final thing of wastewater, it protects the sole aquifer that is so important to the Cape that you're mentioning, and we agree with you. And so we need to kind of do what Paul and Mary are suggesting, is kind of look at this, and this is what this committee is about. We've heard a lot of different groups want different things. I tell people all the time, I've gone to different meetings and they've told me, put that over here. No. This committee says, no, put this over here. I mean, everybody has their own ideas. This committee is going to have to try to figure out how it all meshes. And also very careful in terms of neighbors, in terms of that we're respectful of that, but that if we find solutions, such as the wastewater, then maybe the well fields are going to be okay. Doesn't mean that we as homeowners don't have responsibility to make sure we're not doing else, pouring things into our ground. But so there's lots of good things about this that also help the businesses create an ability to increase the tax base that was mentioned, so that we're not constantly, because quite honestly, we have a lot of things in Yarmouth that we need. A new school, there's a library request. So there are lots of things that we don't have money for. So how we use these kind of sites that are, it's one of the biggest left. And unfortunately, there are some residents nearby, but it has a lot of businesses nearby as well in terms of going further down the road. So that's kind of a good thing, because there aren't residents there. But we would, I'm sure, try as a town to be very respectful of everybody that lives nearby and try to figure. I guess I'd go to some questions about what happens to your developer. So if you get a developer, is he responsible for providing studies about traffic and possibly, lights and access and that kind of thing?
Project like this would have to go through the Cape Cod Commission.
Yeah.
So it'd be reviewed regionally for everything, water, traffic, transportation, and they would require mitigation to any sort of negative impacts. And that goes pretty much for anything you'd see out there, unless you wanted to turn it to open space. I mean, open space is open space. That's not going to have much of an impact. But even 200 residences out there, 2 parking spaces apiece, you're gonna have people there every day on the property, doing stuff on the property, larger sort of septic wastewater requirements. And I mean, other than an open space, there are not proposed uses that are going to have a minimal impact on what's out there, and they all need to be mitigated. So, any residential development over 30 units would have to go to the commission. Any commercial development over 10,000 square feet would also have to go.
Do you have a date for when you're going to be doing your study?
we have a consultant ready, so I think we're gonna execute that contract in October, and they told us it would take a couple of months,
2 to 3 months,
2 months probably.
2 months. So by the end of the year, it
Yeah,
might be
that's what
finished.
we're shooting for the end of the year.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Do you know if there are developers interested in this type of project?
Yeah, there are several private sector developers that have approached us. We've also had a conversation with the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. They're also interested in supporting the project, so yeah, there's interest. If you put out an RFP for it, I think you'd get at least 3 bids.
Okay. Now, when you introduced the idea of a convention center, is that what you?
Massachusetts Convention Center Authority.
So we're not talking really, I think you started out your conversation that we're not really talking about a
No.
convention center, correct?
No, the Massachusetts Convention Center is trying to become more of a statewide convention center. Right now, they're in Greater Boston, Springfield, primarily.
Mhm.
They have a lot of money that is generated through the special taxes that feed that. And it's held in a trust. And so they're interested in making some of that money available to develop.
Two
event space.
developers that might have an answer to providing event space.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we're not talking convention.
No.
No, okay.
That word might be
Problematic.
problematic. Because, and I was going to ask you that too, because I mean, what we've really been talking about is these indoor sports complexes, which are, the basketball courts, they might have a little restaurant, a game room, and then a walking track or something,
Yeah.
whatever the particular needs are for that type of community. But then some of those courts could be converted to some type of event space.
Like-
This is not a,
Yeah, like a golf ship.
Right.
Ship.
so
Right.
that's the type of thing we're talking about, converting basically the sports center, some of the area in the sports center to meet some type of convention need, but smaller type things.
Yeah, and you see most of the sporting facilities that are constructed, there aren't seats.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely not a convention center.
Some other questions? Yes, sir.
I have concerns when I listen to it's right off of Route 6, get off exit 72 now. It's not a straight shot. I mean,
No.
you coming off that ramp, you're tied up there for a while until you can get out. And it's not a straight shot like you're gonna get off the ramp and just go around. Then you gotta run down to where Higgins Crow comes out onto Willow Street, and there's another way there. And then there's a bunch of turns to get up there. I don't think the road, even when you get to Higgins Crow, is really wide enough to handle the traffic you're talking about. And I'm worried about public safety. I think you're gonna need more police and fire, along with the equipment that they need to go with it. And obviously, I'm concerned about the wells also, because I live in the neighborhood and I am in a nitrate loading zone where I can't add a bedroom to my house. And you're talking about putting more housing right in the middle of that field, because not only is the water on that side of the road, but it's on the side that I live on.
Yeah.
It's surrounded. And I would like to see if this comes forward, that the sewage goes in first,
Yes.
rather than build a building and now we get. And in order to do that, you're gonna have to have a plan so you know just how big that sewer pipe's gonna need.
Right.
And I'm worried about, like I say, traffic and public safety and the equipment that they're gonna need. Next thing we're gonna hear is the police department building is not big enough, because you're not gonna be able to house the equipment that you're gonna need. So now you're gonna have to add to the police department or something. Who's does this complex? Are they gonna pay the infrastructure as far as expanding the police department or the fire department? The station we have down there is minimal. And I think you're gonna need more equipment, so. Anyway, I'm really worried about the wells, because I know how many are out there, how many pumping stations that's surrounded, because I've walked that area. And I'd be interested to see, do you have paperwork that shows you where all of those wells are? Okay, so that's it.
Yeah, and I think those are all good questions, all questions that need to be answered during the process. I mean, the protection of groundwater protection is an ultimate concern on the Cape. You know, we clearly, I mean, if you look at Hyannis, you've got biggest wells in Hyannis that are on Willow Street under auto body shops or under the airport. I mean, so we don't want to recreate those kind of mistakes that we've seen in the past, but you know, I think any potential impacts could be mitigated. And I think almost all the uses, maybe except for residential that you're talking about out there, are uses that could be mitigated pretty easily. But you're gonna need the sewer line first.
And also back to the traffic thing, even getting onto the Cape, trying to get people over that bridge. Eventually, maybe they might take it down and build a new one, but in the meantime, you know, this bottleneck all the way from, once you get on the Cape, we just don't have the infrastructure to carry traffic. And I think it all needs to be looked at.
No, the bridge is definitely the bottleneck. You know, I mean, the approaches to each one of those bridges carry a lot more traffic than the bridges themselves. And they need to be replaced, and the way it looks now, the Sagamore project probably starts in 2028. But that's, you know, it's a real concern. But the other concern that we hear a lot, I mean, you can go up to Weymouth in the bubbles that they have at Union Point up there, and you have a Barnstable team practicing in one bubble and a Nantucket team practicing in the other bubble. You know, it's just, it'd be nice not to have to send people the other way.
When you say bubbles, can you explain to people what that means?
Yeah, it's a bubble.
That's a technical term, but layman term.
It's a field with a bubble.
So it's covered in a
It's like a dome.
sense. It's a dome.
Inflatable. Inflatable.
Yeah. And can that be done in the wintertime or is just?
It is only done in the winter time. They actually take the bubbles down in the summer.
And
Domes.
are they lit inside?
They are.
So that might be something that can help with the light pollution that you were mentioning. If something can be,
Does the concept that you have for the fields encompass lighting?
I think any outdoor fields would need to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does.
But I'm just saying, I mean, we don't have real plans yet.
All right. I mean, it's a game changer on many different levels.
Yeah.
And the other question is, we go see our nephew's basketball games at the school still. And soccer. Who gets first dibs on the properties, the fields, the inside?
That's, it'll get you good. What my
Is that,
concern
I mean,
is,
that's, you're almost taking the kids and going like this.
well, my concern is if you're running a business, how do you incorporate the residents into that business? Because it's all day Saturday, not all day, half the day, Saturday soccer. I don't even know how many basketball games there are, but I know it's one right after the other. So how do you tell a business that you have to include their schedule, the residents' schedule, recreational department's schedule into your business?
I think that has to be part of the negotiation.
Yeah,
And so the advantage you have as a town is you already have a rec building. So you know how busy it is, you know how many children. They've got to be able to program it. If it's not profitable for them at that point, then it's not profit.
I mean, that's been my concern since day one of this committee, is when we went through budgets last year in the finance committee, Steve came in and, you know, really opened my eyes at least to how much Mattacheese gets used for the town. And that we limit the size of these, whatever, you know, we're turning kids away, right, from programs and stuff because we don't have the space. So regardless of what we end up recommending as the three options to the select board, that is by far and away has been my number one concern since day one of what are we going to do with the rec? Whether it's this, whether it's housing, whether it's whatever, I think it's needs a lot of discussion. So.
And if I can just say that there's many of us that were on the economic development group that are residents of this town. So we as well would want to make sure that our residents have the priority. But I think there could be a good balance, to Paul's point about having a public-private partnership. And, when I've met with Paul in the past, he's talked about these relationships are very successful in other locations. We just don't have one that's very close to us, but we know it can be done. It's being done now.
Presently, also, there's a field study that the recreation, that we're gonna get an update just to see where they're at, how long till we receive this report. And it was to be a study, as I understood it, maybe Steve can correct me, but my understanding was it was to find out how much the community needed in terms of fields, and also what we have for fields. And the potential for growth was also a factor too. But that report hasn't come out yet, and that needs to be part of this discussion. But I think I just want to mention Paul's thing about, which I really didn't understand till a few meetings ago, was that the leasing of the ground would as well be of interest to the developer, as you're saying, to rent to leagues, because that creates cash for them and helps them reimburse for all the costs that they're going to do to put them in. But the fact that they don't have land cost is huge to a developer. And I think Paul rightly says that if it's correctly negotiated, you will have access, and you maybe can access it at certain times of the day, and that will be your time. And so hopefully it's good negotiation would be a concern, but that's sort of how it works. And certainly traffic, as Paul has said, is the number one for, especially for all the residential area, maybe even the businesses that are in off. There's lots of businesses on Higgins Grove. So I think that has to be a good discussion going forward. But right now, there's so many wants from the town in terms of monies and what have you, that the going to a private-public relationship is probably where they're gonna go. In term, I would think, I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turn, but that provides answers. It provides money to the town for the building of what's hoped. The other thing is, there have been a lot of meetings going on prior to this in regards to teams like recreation, housing, all sorts of things that are putting in their final plans. And one of the ones for economic development included the process of doing events by using basketball courts, whatever is, so that you can do that. So that's not out of, their request here tonight is not really out of whack with what's been going on in the meetings beforehand. So, but I hope you stick with paying attention, because all of those comments are good comments, but there are some answers to some of it too. And it may not be a perfect landing everywhere for all of the issues, but it will provide a lot of good things. David, I know you want to
Those
speak.
sites that you said are successful, that aren't on page, but are successful. Is there a list that I could,
Yeah.
that we could look at?
This one on.
Yes, there should be.
Through the website?
Bill had given.
I mean, that's it. I'd like to-
Yeah, there's phrases, it's in the program, in the,
If you go on the website, is it in the economic development
It
land
is.
use? They have some benchmarking examples in the back near the end.
call it benchmark.
There's actually some copies of the benchmarking right here.
Yeah.
Is that
One of
in,
those.
yeah.
And you may like one of these, the packets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Out of the packet.
Yeah, there's extra copies right here.
Oh,
Mary.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
there's a copy, yeah, there you go.
I will trade. 'Cause I got them like, oh,
David
they-
might.
oh, okay, thank you.
David or maybe a member.
We
Oh,
can share.
Hi.
You can't see it?
Yeah, no, I can't, and he just, was painted.
If I could, I'd like to add a little bit of
Just
context
go
to
there.
some of the
Okay,
questions, issues that have been brought up. So first of all, I am a full-time resident here in West Yarmouth. I was until recently head of a nonprofit that was based here in Yarmouth. Recently retired. But I've been coming actually to the Cape since 1955. But perhaps more importantly for this conversation here, my son owns the soccer club, the only soccer club that is based here on Cape Cod. And they serve over 400 children here on the Cape who participate in the club. He's got 30 some odd teams that participate. Some of the things that I heard brought up, I wanted to talk to. So first, traffic has been mentioned. And it seemed to be tied to the tournament, which yes, drastically draws a much larger crowd. But keep in mind, we're talking about year round. So his 32, 35 teams practice every single week from September to May. So they're constantly looking for fields, and they're currently using fields all over the Cape. They're here in Yarmouth, they're in Barnstable, Cape Cod Academy. They're using fields all over Monomoy, Nauset. So they're constantly looking for fields. So that's already taking place, maybe not in Yarmouth, but that's happening. Tournaments, if anyone's familiar with those soccer tournaments on the holidays, Columbus Day, Labor Day, Memorial Day tournaments, they're held up at Monomoy. And if you're familiar with where the Monomoy High School is, you have to go through residential neighborhoods to get to that field, to those fields. I go there all the time to watch the games. And yes, there's cars on the road, but it's not like it's bumper to bumper traffic and people can't get out of their driveways. That is not the case. Because with tournaments, people are coming and going. Yes, there's traffic, but it's not like this sudden infusion of just 1,300 cars trying to get to one place at one time. So there's that. I think that the draw here, or what I see from the town is a unique opportunity to develop this land for something that you're not going to find anywhere else on the Cape. And the economic benefit of that, and again, with 35 teams. So with my son, they play Sundays. Every Sunday, let's say half his teams are going off Cape, half are on Cape, bringing teams down. So that's what, 16, 20 teams coming to the Cape every Sunday. At least one child who's playing, but mom and dad and siblings are coming along or coming down. And when that game is over, or before the game starts, looking for a place to eat, a place to shop, and maybe a place to spend the night with a pool. Because I used to travel weekends down to the Cape when we had a cottage. And any chance to get to the Cape, we would run down. And so you'd look for a place you could stay overnight. So this development, if it incorporates some sort of a recreational aspect to it, I think is really economically going to help the businesses in town tremendously, but it also helps the residents that live here in providing a space that the Yarmouth residents can actually use. Now, many of the kids on the club come from Yarmouth. I will tell you this, that right now, again, he's spread all over the Cape. He's got people from Falmouth province down to participate and take advantage of it. He uses facilities at Barnstable, Cape Cod Academy, all over. And Steve knows this because you know my son and work with him. He works with the local towns in terms of finding field usage that fits in and doesn't muscle out the town need. Now, having said that, I will also add, and my son actually runs a lot of the town clinics that the towns do with soccer. So the kids that aren't necessarily in the club, there's a fee to be in a club and not everyone can afford it. But he has at least a half a dozen towns on the Cape. He runs the town clinics and some of the town programs in soccer. So he's actively involved. So my point is, he works closely with the towns already. He understands the importance of the towns. He's not looking to muscle in and take up all the time if a new facility is built. He would work around and make sure that the town had the ability to use the facility. But when he is using it, he's paying good money for field, which can help the town and offset some of the costs around building some of this. So I think, to think that maybe this land could just be kept natural and nothing done with it would be great. I don't think it's realistic. If you're going to put something there, something that takes advantage of the September to May period, when people aren't here, the seasonal visitors, that benefits not only town residents, but the businesses and people all over the Cape. And where it's uniquely situated right off the highway, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's better than in terms of those tournaments. It'd be easier than what that we go through there. So that's kind of what I just wanted to share with folks. So
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead.
Do some of these private, getting back to the private-public partnership, there's like the for kicks and stuff like that. What anyone who has fields, do they rent them out to the tournaments like that?
Yeah.
So even though you wouldn't be renting from the town per se, you'd be renting from this business who then gets money and actually can be a productive. Okay.
right. And speaking of those tournaments, the ones that are held at Monomoy, my son's involved in that. He would love nothing better than to bring it to Yarmouth and hold some of those tournaments, or at least some of the games in the town. Because again, he sees how it brings an economic growth into towns in terms of these people, these families that come down for the weekend, and they're spending 2 or 3 nights in a hotel.
What number of fields together is beneficial for that type of tournament that you're talking about?
I don't want to speak directly to that. I prefer him, or maybe Steve would have some idea. But I know when I've talked to my son about this, and the only reason he doesn't come to these meetings is right now he's training a team somewhere on the fields here in Yarmouth somewhere. But at least an indoor field or two that would allow for these games and practices to occur throughout the winter would be ideal. Outside, having, I don't know, he's told me one field would be a blessing just to get one. You build it to 2 or 3, and now you've got a better chance for some of these tournaments. Which again, if you've ever been in the tournaments, they've got half a dozen, if not more, games playing at one time sometimes.
When you say indoor, could it be one of the domes?
Yes. Those domes, they're cheaper to build, but the quality of them these days, they've really perfected it. They've got some really beautiful sites.
Can we go back to the actual square footage? In terms of what you're recommending for that kind of facility?
The facilities that we looked at are plus or minus 100,000 square feet. So it's a big building, but it's really a shell.
And what typically goes into these in order to provide the event space that occasionally would create those hotel rooms being used? And
Yeah, they're large buildings, but they're generally shells, and it usually has mostly sort of basketball courts. Some of them have indoor turf associated with them, but they're multi-purpose facilities, so they can be very flexible. A lot of them have sort of mezzanine areas for viewing, also with indoor track, and usually the face of the building will have space for retail restaurant activity.
is that something that would be allowed in this in terms of?
It's a-
in present zoning wouldn't, but.
Right.
Right.
That's up to,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I told you, Sharon, when Bill Scott was here and we were in discussion with him, he actually had me attend a webinar, which was really interesting.
That's right.
On a company that builds these sports facilities, and they work with communities on how to design them. I'm more than happy to share a link to them. Actually, they email me now all the time. But it's interesting. During the webinar, the process that they go through to help a community decide how it should be built and designed for access. So if you just wanted your residents to access one portion of the building certain hours of the day, they can allow that to happen while other things are happening, so that they have, the ability to use the space freely.
Mhm.
So it was really interesting to go through that, and I'll send that to you and Kathy, so that
Okay.
we can look at it.
Right.
And we have so much to consider for this piece of land. Is it possible, whether it's through Zoom or whether they're here in person, or maybe DCS can answer this, to have someone from a community, that's already done it. Has one of these environments in their backyard. Maybe come down and talk to us, what they encountered, some of the problems they encountered, some of the pros and the cons, and as we kind of take a look at everything here that might be considered, because you have some great ideas.
Yeah, I would take the list that we have. Framingham and Taunton come to mind immediately. As well as another community in Rhode Island. I think you could reach out to the municipal administrations there and ask them if they would have someone that would be willing to come down and talk about the siting of the facility, the permitting of the facility, any mitigation associated with that, what the community benefit or detriment.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if we could talk to someone like that.
Are those actually public-private?
They're all private. But still, I think, any of those municipal administrations would be willing to talk to. And I think what you hear from them actually might be useful, because I think where you have an opportunity here to do something that's creative in sort of this public-private partnership, and the value of that ground lease, and it has a lot of value, so a lot of bargaining and stuff to pitch in there. And yeah, I mean, I would take full advantage of that. So, I mean, all the questions are good. That if Mattacheese is open to this potential use, that's great. From my perspective, because I think the location of a facility like this I think the town of Yarmouth, more than any other town on the Cape, will benefit more from this facility.
Why do you say that?
I say that you've got a great rec program, you got a growing school population, you got a lot of empty hotel rooms, and you've got a very expensive wastewater project. Right, so I think those kind of come together in a way where you can increase your commercial tax base in a way that decreases the pressure on residential property taxes to finish some of the bigger infrastructure projects. And all those hotel rooms are just there already. And so I think maximizing infrastructure already to have people there when they're not there, when they're empty. Because Yarmouth still has a very seasonal economy. And when you get into Barnstable and Mashpee, that's not the same. So I think it does have potential to benefit there. But there are other places for facility to go if it's not Mattacheese. But the questions raised tonight are all valid, and they need to be answered. We're just, we're at a preliminary point in the discussion where this is kind of a suggestion. We do have examples. We've got some information. We'd like to put some more information on the table. But groundwater protection and traffic have to be dealt with. And any concerns of residential neighborhoods that are adjacent to the property also have to be heard. But the town then has to weigh all of that against the potential community benefit from getting some real economic stimulation on the site, rather than just sort of not energizing the commercial tax base, not bringing in new revenue, new opportunities, means the existing financial burden of these infrastructure projects, whether it's new schools, wastewater, whatever, falls more and more on residential taxpayers.
Do you have concerns, like, say this is one of the suggestions, right? And it includes some retail, some restaurants, things like that, right? Do you have any thoughts on, so we're looking at adding more restaurant retail, we have a lot of empty locations throughout the town today, right? Like, any thoughts on that, of like, you're gonna be able to fill them? Is it gonna create so much business that places go on to 28, right, that open up, that have been vacant for a long time? Or
yeah, part of that is in the design of the project too. I mean, you could not allow restaurant or retail space to push people out into other parts of the town. But I think the biggest thing, especially with like the tournaments, are sort of heads in beds. So if you get the hotel activity, then they're out there, they're on 28, they're using those businesses. But I think that's, that's really a preference of the town that could be stated. You're going to have a captive audience in this facility on the weekends, though. So there's a tremendous business opportunity there. I don't know if it would be possible maybe to give local businesses the first cut at an opportunity to open up in the facility itself, satellite. I think there are a number of different, I think you're asking the right question. I think there are a number of different answers.
And I can tell you that on our economic development group, we had two restaurants represented there as well as hotel owners. And that was not a concern of theirs because they felt it would be a different type of food, right? When you're at a sports facility, it's a quick drink, a bite to eat, right? These are restaurants that people would come to after they're relaxing with their family or they're staying overnight. They'd go to a restaurant along 28 or 6A, right? So they didn't have a concern about that. In fact, they encouraged this type of a project.
I would say too, most of these facilities, it's not a full-blown restaurant.
Yeah.
Like Mary's saying, it's maybe a small
Deli.
Dunkin' Donuts for coffees and donuts, maybe hot dogs and hamburger. They're small. They're not a full-blown restaurant where people are going there just to go to the restaurant. It's to support the people that are participating in the sports there.
And all of the other businesses are so gyms, workout facilities and kind of medical facilities as well. Sports medicine, physical therapy, those kind of options are part of what create business-based facilities.
Mary,
I have a question. I don't know if you can see us online. There's a couple people just making sure you know we're here. I have a question when the
Yes.
time is right.
go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Before you move on to potentially the next topics, I just wanted to ask a quick question about the study that was mentioned. And while Paul's still there, if you could just give a quick thumbnail of what might be included in that study. I'm kind of curious with Steve in the room, is this assessing, the types and numbers of fields that you would want, or is this more of like the market demand, the need for it? If you could help us, because we're shaping the project, and that would be informative for us to just know a little bit more about what the scope might be for that.
Yeah, the 2014 report is online, so there will be an update of that report. So the contents of that report will be updated, but it's really more of a market study, Jeff. I think what more than anything else, you want to know that the potential business plan is going to work, and that you have the demand, and you want to know where that demand's coming.
Okay, that's great. That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Casey, I'm going to ask Casey. Sure. Casey?
Yeah, Paul, this is a question for you and slightly maybe different question. Is there a risk that in the designs of this multi-use facility that it's actually too small to actually produce kind of significant economic benefits, right? So we know that with this property, there's a lot of constraints. And with some of the ideas that are proposed, right, we're looking at 3, 4 soccer fields. Yeah, that's not a lot, right? That's not a lot for a big tournament facility to, put a lot of, heads and beds on a weekend. And, as we know on the Cape, right, running a business through the winter is very, very expensive. And so it's to meet this demand that we're talking about, is some of the proposed ideas out there actually going to support that demand? Or is there a risk that there's a potential mismatch and what is developed is actually too small and is actually not going to produce kind of enough revenue generating activities for restaurants and hospitality businesses to potentially boon from that?
Yes, if it's too small, if it's just sort of downsized for the sake of downsizing it because it feels too big, then you run the risk of just building another Hyannis Youth and Community Center and competing with that. So that it is a risk if it's too small. That's why we've looked at other facilities, and that's why I think the 100,000 square foot footprint is probably a good one to work at. But it's an excellent question. Yeah, there is a risk if you go too small.
Any follow-up with that, Casey? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay because I think conceptually, right, we all understand that there's potential significant economic benefits to a facility like this, but again, just the constraints and the realities that we're dealing with this project, it may not be able to produce a project at scale to actually lead to significant economic development of that demand that you're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Casey. I'd like to follow up Casey's question, and that has to do with whether there would be interest by a developer to develop a lease, ground lease, in another location to house fields.
Oh, like to split the program?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are all good questions and I don't see any of them as no-goes. I will say that 70 acres is a larger parcel than any of the other facilities that you see listed.
But the 70 acres aren't available
Right.
to all of us. So, I mean, to
Yeah.
all that we want to do.
Yeah, so some of these facilities are not on huge parcels. Some of them are in industrial parks. The one in Rhode Island in particular is right off the highway.
Do you have some acreage on maybe some of these?
They
other
do. I
facilities?
think we put the acreage on.
In the economic development?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in other words, I have in mind, of course, that we're waiting for this field study.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of what they've been studying to date, whether that's the finished report, I don't know until we get it. But part of this is talking about fields in Sandy Pond, and we're gonna have both of our Steves come up. And
Yeah.
maybe we should be doing that soon, to talk about the recreation study and get that update and the revolving account and all those good things. So Sandy Pond is not that far away. However, it's on a different road, it's in a different neighborhood. And so I'm wondering whether some of the fears of neighbors, instead of having 4 fields or whatever, in a ground lease on Mattacheese might be better suited to split that up so that it still could be tournament because they're not that far apart, but there would be a different traffic flow that's not so.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why that couldn't be part of the discussion, especially with this public-private partnership, working with the rec program. Because if you're gonna have people that are in town, but they're staying in hotels on 28,
Right,
whether they go to the Mattacheese site or whether they go to Sandy Pond, doesn't make a difference,
yeah,
you know, so, yeah.
okay. Any other questions? Yes,
Would more land have to be cleared in order to build this? Because I know that there's the protected box turtle that lives over there, and I just want to make sure that we're not gonna encroach on their habitat.
where is the protected box turtle?
There is
That-
box turtle habitat.
Yes.
Yeah, you won't be able to do anything on box turtle.
In the vernal pool.
Yeah.
Vernal pool? Oh, okay.
There's a whole, in that tar pond in the back, there is
It's
an
not on this
endangered
land.
species. I didn't
Hmm.
know it was the box turtle, but it has been identified.
Yeah, that habitat is marked out.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything in box turtle habitat.
And it's not on the Mattacheese site. It's near
It
it.
is.
It's a
near
little,
it.
it's right on the edge. It's right on
Yeah.
the edge, and then there's the buffer to it.
Yeah, well, there's a buffer to it, but the actual lot line,
It
it's,
goes through it.
yeah,
I think so.
I've seen over by, what's the name of that pond? Horse Pond. I've
Yeah.
actually seen it there as I walk those trails
yeah,
and it was on the trail.
So perhaps maybe it could be looked into before.
Sure.
oh, yeah. Yeah,
So I think we look forward to your study,
yeah,
that once that's published, that I think will give us all an idea of, is this a viable proposition
Yeah.
for any organization to maybe go into a private partnership with our town, at which point we present to the voters and the select board if it might be a recommended thing, and everybody gets to have input about lighting and protected, you know, so that will be a fabulous next step, I think, is
Yeah.
kind of getting that
I think that
market
was the-
study.
insight.
That was
Yeah,
the purpose, to come here and
Great.
talk a little bit more about it and really to be open, I mean, about the size of the facility, potential impacts, at least on some weekends. So we could get some feedback. We want the report that we do to be responsive to some of what we've heard here, so it gives us a chance to sort of scope that for the consultant a little bit, and hopefully we'll get that done by the end of the year and be able to give you some feedback on it.
Terrific. Well, we thank you so much
Yeah.
for
Thank
participating
you.
and coming
No, you guys have.
and
a
getting all the
difficult
questions.
job. This is never easy.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank
you.
Yeah, have a
Thank
good night,
you.
thanks.
And we're gonna ask Steve and Steve to come on up.
Thanks, Mary.
Well, we appreciate your coming. We know you had to go to the zoning, so how'd that go?
That went well. It's now zoned for recreation and other municipalities.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking care of that.
Of course.
Yeah. So, as you know, we're trying to get information from everybody that comes before us, and one of the things we wanted to know is an update on the field study.
Sure.
If you could.
Yeah, so basically what the field study is Weston and Sampson looked at our main fields of Peter Homer, Sandy Pond, and Simpkins Field. We looked at the use of the field, the maintenance schedule of the field, and are putting together a report based off of that. To kind of look at if we're overusing the field, if they're underutilized, and a whole bunch of different aspects on those fields. So basically what they came to conclusion is the fields that we currently have are being a little bit overused, and there's no room for growth on the current fields that we have. So they did draft a couple different options throughout their study. They wanted to provide different options for us to choose from on a town level. And those options are developing Simpkins Field, developing both Simpkins and Sandy Pond, developing just Sandy Pond, and then developing just Peter Homer. And a couple of the options, there's no growth involved with it. So obviously, being at capacity right now, we want to see growth. So as a commission, we kind of went with the Sandy Pond option B, and that would allow for currently right now, Sandy Pond has a softball field and a soccer field. With this option, it would now include 4 soccer fields at Sandy Pond and 2 softball fields, which would benefit from good growth. Now we would have 6 soccer fields in total in town, and then 2 softball fields, 4 if you include the ones at Peter Homer that don't have fences. So that's kind of the conclusion they came to. They're still working on the capital plan for that, and that's why it's been delayed a little bit. But they do have the kind of site plans put in place that we've reviewed and have discussed on.
Okay. So you feel that was going to meet your needs with a reasonable amount of growth?
Yeah, correct. The Sandy Pond option B, which would be adding 3 additional soccer fields to Sandy Pond and an additional softball field. What they also did in the plan was they knew Mattacheese site was sort of up in the air, so they also did a kind of draft layout on what a Mattacheese site would look like as well. They, I believe, are leaving it out of the capital plan because they knew there was a lot of question marks on the site, so they just kind of did a draft on what a potential Mattacheese site could look like.
And that would have been instead of all the.
Yeah,
stuff
so that would be
elsewhere?
instead of, it would basically be the same amount of growth, just at Mattacheese versus at Sandy Pond. It would be 4 soccer fields, 6 including Peter Homer site, and then actually 7 including Peter Homer and Sandy. And then an additional softball field as well. That would be significant growth if that also was incorporated into Mattacheese if we were just to do the Mattacheese site.
So, I'm sorry. Can I-
Go ahead. Yeah,
So,
please.
and your field studies, if you move forward with Sandy Pond, then your outdoor fields from a local rec standpoint would be handled.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that include what you're using Mattacheese for today?
So it's kind
So
of
if we
a
took
gray area
Mattacheese
there.
away,
If we took Mattacheese away, it would still allow for, I guess, growth. I mean, we would move the current use of Mattacheese, just less growth, I guess, in that aspect.
And
But all
in a
your
way like
indoor,
the-
all your indoor.
All of our
And your
indoor,
basketball and your
Yeah.
classroom
Yeah.
activities.
just in terms of field usage.
yeah,
Like,
to the fields.
But not including.
Could you just
indoor
let the
usage.
group know what you're looking for from, we had a brief conversation about if
Mhm.
you were to have a recreation center, what would you want to see in it? And maybe just to explain what your needs are from inside
Yeah, so for recreational use, we definitely like at least one, if not two basketball courts. Currently, right now, we're at Mattacheese 6 days a week for basketball in peak season, Monday through Saturday. And then actually, if when we do our adult league, we're there Sundays as well. So basically 7 days a week, we're at Mattacheese. And then we also use Station Ave Elementary for our second and third grade basketball. So 1 to 2 basketball courts would definitely be sufficient, I think, for our peak season, which would be the basketball season. And then that would also allow for indoor pickleball courts in the off season. Currently at Mattacheese right now, we have 3 indoor pickleball courts lined on the basketball court. If we had the 2 courts, obviously that would double. We use the adjacent rooms at Mattacheese, the band room and the chorus room. We do craft projects in there. We do learn to paint projects. We have a video game and board game room. We also use the site for vacation weeks for both February and April vacation. So we're utilizing all spaces, including the auditorium. So I guess to answer your question, 1 to 2 basketball courts, adjacent rooms to do those different crafts and little builders and our other kind of smaller areas for smaller programs. We could have a yoga room. So I'd say 2 to 3 adjacent rooms. The auditorium we do utilize a lot too, especially during the vacation weeks. We also utilize it for our basketball league. We do an opening seminar and our coaches meetings. We utilize the auditorium as well. Not saying that's as much a need because we could always move that into the bleachers, but we do utilize that space as well. So
you'd
Yeah.
also talked
ahead.
about getting offices for the recreation department. So
Yeah.
the question kind of came up, would the gym and the auditorium be sufficient to meet your needs, or would you need something in addition to that for?
yeah, I mean, I
Everything.
guess storage would definitely be an option. Currently, right now, we use the auditorium as both a storage area and a sort of gathering area as well, like all of our basketball hoops that are lower, the ones that are movable, we have stored in there. Our pickleball nets we store in there. I don't know if anyone's heard of Gaga Ball. It's a up and coming, it's actually been around for a while, but we store our inflatable Gaga Ball pit in the auditorium, so storage space would be great.
I gotta look that one up. I don't know.
Yeah, so basically a big blow up octagon and combo of dodgeball
So
and
do you feel it could be accommodated within that box, or are we talking about the amount of money that would be needed to renovate it? Would then we'd also need to add an addition onto that to meet your needs? Because when we compare that to something new, we want to be apples to apples so that you're getting everything. I realize you're not going to get an auditorium if you were to build new per se.
yeah, I mean, it's with what we have right now, it's definitely we've utilized that space just fine. I mean, the wish list is a second gym, and then the office space you talked about. I'm not sure, has any cardio decks? I don't know if people need me to explain what the cardio decks are
I do.
inside Mattacheese. So there's the main gym, and then on both sides, they're called the cardio decks. It's a flight of stairs, and then there's 2 basically stage areas within the gym. And we've created one side as like a makeshift office with 2 desks and storage area. And then the other side, we have ping pong tables. We have a little like mini basketball hoop like you'd see at an arcade. We have the giant Connect 4 board. We have like the floor checkers, like a big checkerboard on the floor. So it's kind of like a little game area for the kids to play while like an older sibling's playing basketball or indoor soccer. So that's how we've utilized the space right now. And I think it would be nice to continue to be able to have that same sort of space as well.
Have you had a chance yet to go to the powers to be at the school to find out whether those classrooms could be available to you for after school, which I assume is what it's used for? Is that correct? After school? Or
Yeah, the adjacent rooms.
Yeah.
So I haven't had the chance to talk to the schools. An issue with the schools is if we want to use it on the weekends, we do have to pay for the custodians.
Mhm.
An issue is transporting equipment. We'd have to, every day that we're doing a program, transport the equipment and a lot of
Unless there was
equipment.
storage too.
Unless there was a storage aspect within the
Mhm.
school, which I know they're tight on storage
Too.
space as well.
Mhm.
Same with the basketball leagues. When we're over at Station Ave, we don't have any storage there, so we're bringing all the basketball bags, the pennies, the scoreboard, everything that the first aid kit, basically the uniforms at the beginning of the season, they're being transported back and forth
Mhm.
every day, 4 days a week. We're over at Station Ave.
Yeah.
So that's sitting in someone's car, having lugged into their garage or their house at night and then brought back in,
Mhm.
just to be able to run the basketball league for
Mhm.
the 2-3 months that we're there. So
Mhm.
using the schools is a temporary, I think, solution, but we don't have the storage space and the actual space to call our own. It makes it a lot more difficult and
Right.
more time consuming, I guess, too, that we're paying the gym supervisor extra to have to do those extra things instead of just showing up and everything's there.
Mhm. Well, the nice thing now is you have the access
Yeah,
to the gym
yeah,
anytime you want, really. right?
exactly. And there's no restrictions on
No,
when we run programs,
programs,
and we're
yeah.
running them during the day and at
So
night.
you're being spoiled right now.
We are,
Karen,
exactly.
What
We
if
have the
you-
riches right now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, where was all the Connect Four and the ping pong and that, so like before Mattacheese was vacated, was that just not a thing?
So yeah, exactly. It wasn't a thing. We've purchased all this equipment.
Yeah.
Since we've had the school, and we've increased our program numbers. Both for adult and children. Our basketball league, we've added the pre-K and the kindergarten and first grade league. We've added the adult basketball league. We brought back our high school league. So we've added a whole bunch of different programs
And
solely
you-
on the use of Mattacheese.
Mhm,
And
that's great.
what do we do with all the equipment if we don't have that space? We don't have a solution
It's
for
hard
it,
to
so.
offer something and then take it away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard to be like, look at what we have for the youth
Yeah.
of this town and then be like, not next year.
Exactly.
But when you talk about custodian costs, when you go through the schools, are we not incurring that at Mattacheese or?
So we don't incur that. Well, so we
is
do,
someone
we do
it?
cleaning.
Because-
We do
Yeah.
cleaning once a week at Mattacheese. They clean the bathrooms and then our staff cleans inside the gym and the hallways.
Yeah.
But
it's not like the contracted custodian services that the district.
so the
Employees.
bathrooms are the contracted one. time
No,
a
like
week.
if you go to the school, like you
Oh,
have to
no.
use their contracted
Yeah.
companies.
No.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
And we only have to incur the custodian costs of the schools on the weekends,
Mhm.
since they're there at night anyway during the week.
Yeah.
So in terms of your recreation process that was through the muck teams, you also came out with a preferred plan. Would you
Mhm.
want to talk as to what you really need or want, I guess?
Can I interrupt 1 second? Can I get a
Sure.
question before you step in it? On your study, I'm curious to know why you didn't also include the tennis courts and the basketball courts.
So the study was strictly looking at fields. We don't generally, or actually, we don't at all rent out the basketball court and tennis courts. Those are basically just public use.
But you're looking at growth in those areas, or what condition they are, or do they have to be replaced? Are they, what condition they, I'm just curious why that was omitted. That was really my question, because that's part of those fields. In each of those
Yeah,
fields, you have those things there. People playing tennis. I
Right.
have somebody who plays tennis, and he's kind of concerned about the condition of some of the tennis courts.
So
So
that's,
go ahead.
yeah, so that's a good question. And actually is addressed sort of, not explicitly, but in the Sandy Pond option B that we are leaning towards, that project does replace the tennis courts and the basketball courts at Sandy Pond. So
Okay,
it didn't
that's why you're kind
necessarily
of.
address the
Yeah, I just
need
wondered
or
if you
the
looked at
use of it,
all of them, all of the courts, like the ones that this basketball courts at Old Town House.
yeah, there's one at Mattacheese, an outdoor one.
Right. So that's why I was just curious why that wasn't. Maybe you could have added them in and did the whole.
Joe, the other thing that wasn't taken into consideration in the field study was any of these school fields. all the school fields that we have in town were not factored in for that.
Oh, okay.
Just
Their
because they
school-
weren't our
town.
fields, they're the school fields, not the town fields.
Yeah, and there wasn't really a way to track the use of those courts and the tennis courts and the basketball court because we don't rent it out. So we don't really have the numbers to support, oh, it's being used this amount of time, this days a week. I think that was one of the factors on why they didn't really dive into it because there was just no data on them. I guess maintenance data could have been looked at. Conditions may have been looked at.
Right.
But I guess one of the main reasons why it wasn't is use of it was unavailable.
Yeah, I see a lot of kids playing basketball at the townhouse court. There's kids playing all the time. Not as much down at some of the other fields, but it's just something that I was surprised it was just not looked at or addressed. But your final recommendation, though, is to improve the Sandy Pond fields. But there's
Correct.
nothing else can be done to those courts there. Right?
Correct.
Well, he did mention that in that process of doing that, they were recommending changing 4 courts to 3 courts to move
Yes.
them back, and so the courts would be new
At Sandy Pond.
at Sandy.
location.
Okay.
Yeah.
The townhouse,
And the
But-
basketball court would be new as well. There would be 1 basketball court at Sandy Pond under
Okay.
their preferred
Plan B.
Plan B.
okay, and nothing at townhouse at this point?
No, nothing at townhouse.
Okay. Just curious about that. All right.
Well, there was discussion about extending one of the fields there.
Yeah, so one of the options, Peter Homer, that brought no growth to the town would be, but better soccer use would be extending the field so that you can use the field and the maintenance of the field so that you can use the field the long way and then use the field for 9v9, the short ways as well. So each season you flip flop the fields that you do 11-on-11 soccer one way, and then the next season it will be the smaller 9 versus 9. So the goal melts would have less use to them, would require less maintenance to rehab those goal melts. And then other high usage spots on the field. And then included in that Peter Homer option would be to upgrade the lighting there as well to LED lights for better cost effective lights.
Would you be interested in if there was an opportunity for that whole plan to be or at least certainly the soccer fields and the 2 softball fields paid by somebody else, as long as you could have access to them when you wanted? Would you be open to that possibility? Because, they're gonna run it and do tournaments.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, we'd be open to any option to refurbish the fields and take care of the fields. As long as we have some use for our recreational programs as well.
Yeah.
I think
Steve, how do you
can be-
feel about that?
Well, we are talking about Mattacheese now when you say that, or you're talking about Old Townhouse or Peter Homer?
Yeah, I guess that is a
What do
good
you,
question to ask.
your question?
Oh, Sandy Pond, I was talking
You're
about.
talking about Sandy Pond. Yes, the Sandy Pond Plan B with the 4 soccer fields and the 2 softball fields seems like the ideal solution to what we need for fields. To me.
Yeah.
And just to point out, I'm sure everybody remembers that we used to have a soccer tournament in this town every year on Columbus Day. When we had a soccer tournament, we had it for 20 years. It was always on Columbus Day weekend. And we would have 20 fields that we'd use. We'd use probably 10 fields at the high school. We'd have 4 fields at Station Avenue. We'd have Old Townhouse, had 2 fields. We'd use Sandy Pond. We'd have all of those fields and we'd have a tournament in the town. So when you asked
before about having, fields not non-contiguous to Mattacheese. It's possible. It's possible to have a tournament that way.
Mhm. Well, thank you. I didn't know the history. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Used to be a very, very big tournament. There was like 300 teams
Is that right?
every year.
Now they
Yep.
weren't.
No,
No,
they
this
were
is
from all over. Yeah.
Off Cape as well.
Oh, yeah, way off there.
Oh, yes, yep,
Yeah, Joe remembers that. Worcester, yeah.
yep, yep. It was pretty popular and I used to ref a lot of those games. Yeah. That
We
was-
have a
Roby and Jeff.
Roby.
Yes, thank you. I have two comments. The first is Steve referenced storage and utilizing the auditorium for storage currently. Steve, I had a question. When you use the auditorium, what happens to all of those things that you're storing in the auditorium? Number one. And also for the point of storage, it's my understanding that there's a lot of items currently stored at 424 Route 28 for recreation. Would that be something that you would consider moving all of that items, all of those items that Recreation has stored in that building to the new site? Sorry, that's a two-part question. And then the other question I have is related to the soccer fields that you just referenced, Steve. I actually remember that as well. But now that I'm a little bit more involved with the fields, my question is, when did we rest those fields? Because we're finding more and more from the golf department perspective, the park department's perspective, with the use of fields, we need to rest them because of such heavy use. So just wanted to get clarity on that as well. Thank you.
That tournament was only one weekend a year, and most of the fields that were used were the school fields, which we're basically not allowed to use anymore.
I'm not sure.
Jeff.
Yeah, well, I guess to answer Roby's question about the storage space, so the storage that's currently in the auditorium, when we use the auditorium, it's pressed up against the back wall of that auditorium. And it does allow for plenty of space, walkway space for both egresses on both sides. So that's not an issue. We do move the Gaga Ball pit when we do our large 1 week events. We move that up onto the cardio deck where we do some storage. And then we can always break down the pickleball nets too if they ever become a problem. As for the equipment we have at Recreation Offices site, we've essentially moved most of that equipment over to Mattacheese. What we have right now at the Recreation Building is old, kind of discarded pennies that we may need to use in a pinch. We have a couple of portable disc golf nets that we have at the Recreation Building. We have some craft supplies, some stuff for our Halloween and Easter events we have at Rec Base. We have a couple of basketball hoops that fit on the rim to make another backboard that's lower, that are a real hassle to set up. So that's why we purchased the movable ones, because you need to get on a ladder, you need two people to put it on, and it's also kind of a safety hazard. If anyone were to grab onto that rim, it would potentially come down and fall on them. So those are kind of out of use now as well. So there's not really any real usable equipment that we have over at 424 site right now. Mostly the Halloween and Easter event items that we have stored there right now.
That's great. Thank you. When we're talking storage, just want to make sure that you get enough storage in whatever facility ends up being utilized. Thank you for that.
Jeff.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve. It's nice to meet you virtually. I think I have three questions, and I'll ask the first one, but I just don't want to forget that I had two more. The first one is a little bit hypothetical, but it's just orientation for I think for us with respect to Sandy Pond. Again, hypothetically, would it be conceivable that that location could support a new building? So if the conversation is about building a new recreation center building, is it at all possible that a building could fit at that site? I'm not that familiar with it, and I don't have the rec field study in front of me.
I don't want to misspeak really. I'm not the engineer on fields and where buildings can be placed. There's just not, based on the water wells at that site as well, there's not really any, I think, wide enough space for a building. Basically how it's laid out right now is it's a long strip that basically only will allow for the width of a soccer field. I don't know if you see that.
That tiny little
But
picture.
basically, the recreational use land is a narrow path that's only wide enough for soccer fields. So if you want to build a building, that would be essentially the only place you could put it on that site.
Well, there is an adjoining piece of property next to the dog park, which is owned by or used by the DPW. That could use a facility.
Okay. And
Isn't
it's
that where you're
just,
putting one softball fields?
That's where a softball field is and where the dog park is as well.
that's helpful. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's just a little bit of an orientation question for us. And then the other part of this question is, as part of our team, we have an architect who is looking at the gymnasium and auditorium building, and they have come to this committee with some preliminary numbers. And so we just want to make sure, I mean, those are large numbers. So we're talking, early estimates of 22 million to just renovate the shell. And where we started to get in this discussion with them, and this meeting is going to be informative, so we'll make sure that they watch this meeting, and maybe there's a conversation they have with you about those cardiac areas. They're not ADA accessible. So one of the things the architect was acknowledging is that those would need to be brought down to meet the grade. And just thinking about renovating versus new construction, there's really this idea of whether it's purpose built or not. And it sounds like you've been doing great, maximizing the space that you have there. There is going to be this question about the cost benefit of renovating the space and being limited versus building a new space and having the things that you really want. What the architect kind of challenged us with, and I have this meeting and maybe a follow-up to bring back to the next muck meeting, is some evaluation of whether an addition to the gymnasium and auditorium would actually be necessary to provide offices and storage and really actually get you the things that you need. And that would increase that $22 million estimate up to some number, which we don't know yet. And then just my final point, it's about the wish list. It was written well in the report, and then you mentioned it, but this idea of a second gymnasium, a second basketball court. So I just want to be clear that space that exists today is one basketball court, but you do feel like having a second basketball court, might be really beneficial, and the renovating within that space would not provide that. So moving forward, there's these conversations that everyone's going to have to grapple with about trying to preserve the gym and auditorium, and if it's really going to get you the community what it needs, or whether you start shifting towards talking about a new building, because the difference between the two is significant, but it's going to be a couple $1 million, but it's going to be, what does that couple $1 million get the community? So maybe after this meeting, I think there's a task for the architect to double down on, see if an addition would really be necessary and come up with that number. And we were planning to bring that back to the committee next month. But Steve, it's really nice to meet you, and I appreciate this dialogue.
Yes, you as well. In terms of a renovation project, kind of some of the drawbacks I see from that is during that renovation, what do we do? We won't be able to run programs during that time. What do we do with all of our equipment in there? Is it cost effective to really renovate that space and then lose all of our programs for that, however long it takes to renovate? Or just build something new, or like you talked about, build an addition, but while building that addition, we're able to use that space at the same time, the current space. And then once that addition's built, we move to that, and then the renovations start. I think that's a job for you, the architect, obviously, to kind of see the cost benefits of all options.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And the renovation, I mean, the addition was really just to accommodate storage and offices, so it probably wouldn't be
Gotcha.
Unless we're talking about adding a gym, I think that
Mhm.
a separate basketball court, I think that would blow out the proportions. I think that would make it almost a moot point between renovate and construct new. They were talking about a one-story addition off the front that could accommodate storage and offices. So it wouldn't be sufficient to swap all your activities into the addition when and if they come forward with that next month. But thanks.
Makes sense.
Any other questions for Steve and Steve? Well, we appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
And, I'm sorry.
Questions on the revolving fund?
Yeah, the revolving fund.
Yeah,
You-
what type of questions do you have about it?
I was hoping for a report for a 1-year report.
1-year report on the revolving fund, so I can get that to you.
Okay.
So basically what the revolving fund is all the money we bring in from our programs goes into that revolving fund. That's programs and field rentals. And then we use that money to support our programs and buy equipment for the fields and buy equipment for our programs. Like our Halloween event, we don't charge anything for it. So we use that money we built up from some other programs to do that. We learned a crab and clam class with DNR this summer. No cost to the kids that took it, but we bought all the rakes and the baskets for that with that revolving fund. So it's essential, obviously, to our programming.
Right. Well, if you could get that 1-year report, that would be helpful for our committee.
Yeah.
But what comes in goes out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what comes in. And I thought revolving funds were supposed to go back to where they came from.
So there's different accounts within that revolving fund.
Yeah.
So we have a seasonal account and that goes back to all of our seasonal programs. We have
Okay.
a basketball account within that revolving fund that goes back to our basketball programs. We have pickleball, goes back to pickleball.
That's what
Our
I-
swim goes back to swim.
Okay, yeah,
So there's accounts within that revolving account.
okay,
It does go back into the same pool.
okay. Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to that just to have.
Yeah.
And if we may follow up with additional questions as we discuss and say, whoa, whoops, forgot to ask this.
Yeah.
So we appreciate your time.
Of course.
Thank you, Steve, for
Thank you.
coming. Steve and Steve.
Steve and Steve.
Steve and Steve.
Good name. Don't listen to the
Yeah,
names. Yeah,
right.
won't forget us.
Yep.
Uh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roby just mentioned that the upkeep of the Mattacheese building itself is being paid for by the Mattacheese account, not the revolving fund, which makes sense.
Facilities. Takes care of the
There
building.
you go.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks. Thanks
Good
for
night.
coming.
Thank you.
Stay in touch now. Yeah.
5 minutes, we gotta clock quick.
Well, I don't know where to choose from because we still have a lot. I think we need to do the project schedule.
Can we
And
talk
we,
about 5 and 6 really briefly? Because I think the next thing that we're talking about is when Jeff and Heather come back in October, is they want to come back with some revised bubble diagrams
Yeah.
to kind of show how the different land uses might be laid out based on all of this different input that we've had and kind of what are the potential land uses that you kind of want to see represented in one of the 3 bubble diagrams, so to speak. I think the things we've been talking about obviously all along are housing. We need to keep a space for the school. Bob Rittenauer is really talking about having the school being that 8 acres being located over the existing school so that it's not doubling up. I don't know exactly.
Small.
Yes. And with the idea of maybe there's some type of temporary school trailers or whatever in order to accommodate that.
Another wrinkle.
I know, and then we'd have to pay for all, yeah. So it's all, and it's the timing is difficult because they're just going to be starting their study and it's going to take them a year to finish and we're working on our study. And then obviously recreation is a huge component, whether it's something that we want to look at where we're providing something for our local recreation community, and then whether we want to and or have options that include the sports complex that was discussed. Sounds like those are the things that we're looking at with the mixed use idea.
right.
Yeah, and Kathy, if I could, that was a good introduction. And what we're thinking about is we provided 3 bubble diagrams to the committee at the meeting in August, and what what we honestly think is that providing about 3 more bubble diagrams may be useful to the committee to see the full range of options. And I have a quick slide I would like to share really briefly. We just want to get a little guidance because I think our plan would be to come back in October with the 3 additional bubble diagrams, which we think taken collectively will inform you guys as to where do you want to go with the 3 concept plans. So we would kind of have these 6 bubble diagrams and we have to get guidance on getting down to 3. So I'm gonna share my screen in a moment, and they're small. The way this is going to present is going to be a little bit small for you in the room, but along the top are the 3 bubble diagrams that we already presented back in August. So nothing really changed about them, but the top one, starting on the left, was with Emmy Small, and I had that as the driver of that site. The middle one, we showed a program where there was more housing, and we did get feedback that from the housing committee that that's probably too much housing. And then on the right, the upper right was the sports complex, and it's a variety. We did not specify whether it's town owned or a tournament type facility, but the size and scale of the one in the upper right is a little bit more like tournament. We had already shown, based on the community meeting we had in June, we had a sports facility, box. This is a bubble diagramming exercise at 100,000 square feet because we already had heard that. In the upper right, we had the gymnasium staying, and then we had housing in the upper right. So we had those 3. And this is my rudimentary sketch for now, which is the bottom 3 on the left. We see this opportunity to put Emmy Small, to preserve the space right over the existing buildings. And as Kathy said, that was something that the town administrator requested. The sports facilities generally just stays above that. The light gray is parking, and the blue it would be a community center, recreation center, a new building with housing on the right. The middle one is moving the housing from the upper right area of the site and moving it to the lower left. So over where, we would put housing where Emmy Small buildings are today, assuming that Emmy Small went somewhere else. We just wanted to show a bubble diagram with the housing moving over there. We haven't really shown that. And what that does is it moves over the sports, whatever the arrangement is, to the upper right where the Mattacheese buildings are. And we're just holding a spot for this should actually say recreation center, a rec building of some sort. And then farthest to the right is really pretty similar to all of them, except from some of these discussions we've heard a question about, well, what if some of the treed areas are not maintained as trees? So if you look at the upper right hand column, we have the wooded area preserved. In the map on the lower right, it's usable space, although it would be removing trees. And so we think that there should be a bubble diagram at least demonstrating that for the committee. And then for October, you would have sort of all these different scenarios that are reasonably depicting some options, and that could help guide you to picking 3, because we really need, when we talk about the schedule briefly, we really need to get some guidance in October as to what 3 plans we start to actually put details to. So this is all based on things we've heard, and we talked a little bit about some of this stuff in August. But so I just wanted to put these out as draft sketches just to get the board's opinion. Is it worth us doing this for the next meeting? So I'll stop with that.
Jeff, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Any of those 3 bottom ones, you disappeared. Oh, no,
I'll
you're
put it
there.
back.
Yeah. Are any of those 3 bottom ones your own design? What you think, if we wanted housing, a sports facility, and what else am I missing here? School. If we wanted, let's start with that one on the left. If we wanted housing, a sports facility, and a school, an existing school, how would you best design that? As a designer, what would you
Yeah.
suggest?
I think that's a good question. I'm going to dodge part of it. honestly, about with the school. I think that, you know, we're trying to be somewhat realistic with putting the school over the Emmy Small buildings and kind of holding that. So I would shift more towards the middle drawing that we have here.
Okay,
Heather and I have not discussed this in great detail, but the biggest thing that we think would be a design change would be to take the blue block, which should say rec center, and put it there or thereabouts and move it closer to the road. And the freedom, you know, that where we get this freedom is by not holding on to the gymnasium and auditorium in the back. So that was the conversation that we had. Like, so if you look at the diagram just above that, you know, holding on to the gym, you know, it's going to need an addition to really provide a full rec center. It would need an addition, and then we're anchored in the back of the property. So we would probably pull that rec building up to the front. Housing could probably stay there, and sports, you know, would move towards the back as long as we're maintaining that wooded area. So Heather, you unmuted. I don't know if you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that the top three concepts really didn't give any direction as to whether or not the Mattacheese school stays or goes. And that was what really drove the design of those bubble diagrams, was incorporating that in some way, or, you know, showing that it could be a buffer area or the like. So I think from a planning perspective, active uses, in terms of, I want to say more like the daytime uses, outdoor playing fields, that kind of a thing. Even the community center, I think those closer to the road make more sense. With housing being able to be a little more flexible and be toward the back of the site more, where there could be more buffer. Um, that would be my take if I were to say this is what I think you should do, not taking into consideration anyone else's opinions or comments or anything. I would have, you know, the community center up against the street. I would have more of the, like, if there was a sports facility, I would have that up closer to the street with the playing fields kind of around the periphery and housing toward the back of the site.
what do you have in the community center? Because I'm concerned that, well, I'm not concerned, but the sports facility to me houses a lot of what the community wanted. So I don't know that we need a separate square for representing the amount of square footage that's in the auditorium and gym. If we have a big enough site that is the recreation facility that provides some of those community interests.
I think the green is fields. See, even the top right, the green is fields. There's still a community center, that blue block. That
Right,
would be indoor.
yeah,
So like the blue block, the way that it is, and any of the bottom ones would just reflect.
Is that the sports complex slash recreation facility? Or is that a
It-
town?
Blocks the
Sorry,
indoor
maybe you
sport.
know.
So yeah, no, this is good. In the lower right, the darker blue, which says facility, that was just intended to kind of just show the sports facility.
that's existing now, right?
No, that's a larger. That's what was discussed tonight. This idea, because this is not a new idea. This was published in May, that report. So that dark blue in the bottom right, that dark blue box facility is a 100,000 square foot, you know, indoor sports facility.
Oh,
The green would be the playing fields.
Correct. Correct. And
Oh,
we're just, you know, this exercise was just me in PowerPoint. The what we want to produce in bubble diagram style is what similar to the upper three you know, renderings, and bring that back in October. And then I think to the question about the community center, you know, I think that's a discussion amongst this committee and likely the select board. You know, we heard at the community engagement session that people would like a community center of some sort, a new building with recreational opportunities plus two gyms, you know, space for pickleball and offices and storage. And so we're not at a point yet of ruling that out until we present these bubble diagrams in October to you all.
Would that also be a private, public
No.
ownership?
Not in the general scenario. So like if you look at the upper bubble diagrams,
Well-
the left and the left and the middle, you know, we had the community center over the gymnasium, and so that was a town-owned facility, and then the middle diagram was similar, where you have the gym and you have some sort of town-owned facility, and then farthest to the right, you have that private sports facility. It's just not, we don't have enough information yet to know that we can totally just merge the two, the community uses and that private sports facility. But I think the discussion tonight was pretty informative for us. There's a lot of potential opportunity. So when we come back in October, I think that's a great question that we can kind of hone in on. I think one more thing that Kathy said, you know, I think there are some other really big ticket items that the town has on the docket. So a new ME Small school, a new library, and maintenance of three at least three buildings. So the viability of building a brand new town-owned recreation or community center seems like a big question mark, at least at this point.
Well, I was gonna bring that up, that in fact, when we went to a housing workshop, to, go over, Bob's suggestion, we went to a housing workshop, which included, housing representatives, from the Community Housing Committee and the Housing Trust, to iron out, you know, any misconceptions of the public presentation that was made in regards to housing. And so it worked out well, everything is fine, and the committee feels comfortable. But what was said by Bob was, this is what was the beginning part of it. There is no money for any of this because of the constant need of their capital, in terms of the library, as we said, but first the school, the library, and other capital things going on. So for me, that means individual buildings to be built by the town may not happen for years. So that if we have a real interest in producing something, it's going to be a private-public relationship. And I see that, not that I wouldn't want another building to house many different things that have come up down the road, you know, as a possibility, which might be that, you know, I don't know that I want to designate as a community center because people would have an expectation that that might be built, you know, first, and it won't. It will be built last if it ever gets built. So using what they wanted, which is recreation, could be part of that design that we're talking about, and be what we end up talking about in terms of what we want to try to do is a sports facility that does a number of things. It provides community things to do in terms of basketball courts and volleyball courts and pickleball courts and walking, you know, walking and running track above, or whatever all that ends up happening. That may be the best at the moment that we can do for a community, for our community. And so for realistically, the bubbles probably should kind of put that. I'm not afraid to put maybe a learning center or some other kind of wordage for that extra building down the road that maybe other things could be done with.
Are you trying to say that, like, instead of having the blue community center, that possibly if it turns into a public-private relationship, that might be one of the things that they determine in the contract that says we
Build us a
get
gym.
1,000 square feet for office for recreation storage. That's
Right.
what you mean?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. And
The question is the timing, because there's going to be a gap, and that's what I feel bad about.
Right. For rec,
Yeah,
having
they've
some,
got all these great programs that
For
there's going to
sure.
be a gap,
but
and I don't know how to fix the gap.
I know, I don't think it's not easy to figure out any of the things.
right.
But I mean, even to your point, like it's costing us money right now,
Right.
this very moment.
Right. The other
It's
thing
costing
that
money.
I've done as a representative of you as chair has also been to contact, in having learned from Bill, critical path, development process to try to keep things going for this project is also taking a look at the possibility of down the road demolition of the buildings that we think we're going towards, whether that includes just the school buildings and or the gym and auditorium, I don't know. We haven't decided that. But whether we can use any of our remaining budget for just getting the hazardous waste people in to take a look at the schools, because you need that hazardous waste removed before you tear down the building. So I just want to mention that. I've been working with Bob to have that conversation as to whether that's part of the town warrant, which we don't see them to officially ask that. So I sort of asked that. So we're figuring out what the budget is that we have remaining, and then we'll have more discussion about that. And then the other third thing I did was to go to the town clerk's presentation in regards to minutes. That's all. I just at least wanted to get that into this. So I'm having a problem with, if there's no money, why are we creating a bubble? Unless we want to put a label on something as potential and maybe list the different things that it could be down the road. And, or that it could be via a private-public relationship.
I think,
Just as another,
Yep.
thought to put in here, it is possible, although I know it could be very difficult, but it is possible to negotiate with the schools for them to put the recreation program there temporarily while we build or make a decision about, especially if we're gonna take down Mattacheese. The schools, maybe they can give us a year of use on their facilities or whatever time frame it takes. Because the schools are part of the community.
Right.
And they're not a kingdom unto themselves.
Right.
So I'm sure we could negotiate something there, make sure that Rackley stayed up while the bubble was.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure we're helping you right at the moment,
can I
but
make a suggestion?
sure.
I mean, I haven't seen any of those bubble diagrams, the new ones, and I know that Mary hasn't either, so maybe staff can get together and maybe we can meet with Jeff and Heather in a Zoom meeting or something and talk a little bit more details about that, because I think a lot of things that you're talking about are things too. I know that they got a lot more information from this meeting. They probably would change the bubble diagrams themselves based on some of the input.
Well, I value their opinion as designers.
Mhm.
So rather than me deciding where the best location is.
But I think
Now, that
staff has
doesn't-
expertise as well
Yeah.
that we should offer.
But I also reserve the right to pick on it if I don't like it too. So, I mean,
I was in the corner.
Yeah, I think we're on board with that, Kathy, that suggestion. I think what we were thinking is having a few more options to look at before you start picking a path. Would be beneficial to the committee. You know, gym or no gym, show a recreation center or not, and that's a big question, obviously. But we think that coming back in October with those, and we can have a pre-consultation with Kathy and Mary. That's
Can Jeff
fine.
put them back up one more time? Because I just have a question for him.
And can you also send them to me, Jeff, so that
Yeah, can you put them up one more time, Jeff? Because one is just so different. I just have a question for you. The one with
the one on the
big-
right,
Yes, the one that has like all the
all the way to the street?
field.
get all the field and the facility together and the housing in a place that, the housing people never thought of. What I'm wondering is if when you put all the sports and the rec center, the town-owned rec center, all together, are you able to put more facilities, more capacity there when you get them all together? I kind of feel that, the housing people like that upper right corner, just because it gives them some space from the existing neighborhoods, right? And because we have this, a little side note, just because we didn't want to take down trees, right? And we want to cut down as few trees as possible, the housing people, we wanted to build up and not out. So that's why we kind of like that corner, right? Because it would be softened. It wouldn't be right on the street,
three-story building.
Can I ask you a question? So I'm catching up a little bit
Yeah.
tonight. I see that housing is on all of these. Is the septic a thing that, or the sewer, I mean, gonna be put in before any housing is
So
built?
the reason why the housing is a pivotal component to this, and because, and we won't be able to put housing up there if we don't get this, would get a subsidy either from MassWorks or another affordable housing source for the infrastructure for the sewer pipe to come up the site. Which would save local taxpayers millions and millions of dollars, because another pot of money would be sewering your neighborhood and not, you know, the local property taxes. So that's
Is
the,
that just like?
If you need to
or
go,
is that like a
go, Lindsay.
thing
Yeah.
that's going to happen?
I can talk to you more about it,
Okay.
just because I just want Jeff to kind of, you know, explain, like, the one on the right, it's got so much green. Is there like a synergy that multiplies the capacity for sports and recreation because you put it all together?
What's the two yellows in the back? Is that Mattacheese schools?
Those are the existing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all of this is hypothetical, Mary. I appreciate that. I mean, one of the bubble diagrams that we had not drawn was moving the housing, different from what the housing committee had chosen. So just to give Muck the full range of options,
Okay.
And it's not saying that that's the best site, but that was what we were tasked for. Is
Okay.
what would we do?
You know what I'm saying?
And-
Yeah, we should
Yep, and we can put our heads
talk
together.
about phasing.
But the idea is that we would like the committee to have seen more options to make sure that you've seen the range, and then really hone in on what you think are the three best options, because ultimately we're still trying to get to one through this process, and that that's our goal, but we want to take steps to get you there. So I know we talked about this a lot. I think there is a question about the schedule. Should we touch on that briefly? I know
Yes,
we're
yeah,
losing folks,
yes,
but
yeah.
I just make one comment real quick. I'd love to see a bubble with only sports.
See, I don't. I think this site is a multi-use site,
Who's paying for it?
housing.
Housing can get you the infrastructure, right?
So I mean,
Ian,
it's
Ian?
8:20, so I don't want to belabor the point, but if you look at the
Yeah.
original bubble with, you've got all these fields, you've got this house, you have 320 parking spots. So you're gonna have one tournament and no one's ever gonna come back again. Because where are these people gonna park?
Are you talking about with all the fields?
Yep.
Yeah, that's my issue, is that I think it needs to be split to Sandy Pond.
But I think
And if
too-
they're willing to do that, I think you should do that.
I think
And
to
I-
Casey's point, if you don't do it big enough.
Well, I think the big enough would be with Sandy Pond in terms of fields.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know,
the
that's my
diagram-
opinion.
How are we
Diagram
paying for
too, like
those?
you said
Huh?
earlier,
How are we
that
paying
was,
for those?
Too much housing, even by
With-
housings.
With what?
Yeah,
they're-
so,
assessment,
right, so
then
when you went
Public,
back,
private.
I'm sorry, Jeff, we
Yeah.
love your diagrams, we're like so into them. The middle one on the top row, it had 6 acres of housing and then 12 acres of housing.
I just remember them
And
saying
we were
like,
like,
even though
that's
much
too
more.
Too much, like,
Yeah.
that's not, that.
So maybe edit that accordingly. to
Yeah.
just, like incorporate maybe more parking, to John's point, if there was a tournament or field opportunity. If that diagram too is too much housing, can we make it more parking?
There's no retail, there's no restaurants, there's nothing, right?
I don't think that
Well,
option
we
included a
talked
sports.
about.
But that could
yeah,
be-
these are all good discussions. I think that they're discussions that we should have when we actually have the actual drafted bubble diagrams, because these are my rudimentary. I'm going to put them up one more time. I just want to make this one observation is, we don't necessarily want to eliminate bubble diagrams at this point. We want to show you a couple more.
Okay.
So the middle one at the top,
Mhm.
that one was, we heard it was too much housing even for what the housing committee was desiring. So the one below that, the one directly below that, kind of balances additional sports facilities of some sort. But I think to the gentleman's point, maybe not showing the entire site as sports. We heard not a lot of support for that even at the community meeting. But the image in the lower right is really where we're pushing more recreation to see what it looks like, to just understand that even the conceptual layout of that. And that has that facility building, which based on what I heard from the chamber discussion was whatever restaurant, retail, or other uses would all be in that same building. And so I think as we move forward to the next meeting, we want to get some guidance from the committee as what you would like to see more details on. And that's when we really hone in on the number of parking spaces. So, these are the conceptual, we're not the next level as we leave October and start to go to November, December. That's when we actually start to put site plans together and look at, the difference between 300 parking spaces and 1,200 parking spaces. And is that even conceivable to fit, and where would it go? So we're not quite there yet. We wanted to come back in October with the bubble diagrams to make sure we have clarity. And then we start to do that more detailed mapping exercise.
I would just remind you too, that everybody talked about housing. Every committee talked about the need for housing for municipal workers, for, some affordable housing, but also even market housing. So that's a comment I'm gonna make.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep. And so here, I'm just gonna put up the schedule. It's a lot. Everything in the gray and the upper, the top. Just don't worry about that. That's all stuff. That's all stuff that's been accomplished. So we're on 5.2, which is right in the middle of the screen. So we're tonight. We knew that the chamber was coming. 5.3, the next line is this meeting in October. So October 9th is, if I have my dates correct, that would be potentially the next month meeting. And what we would like to come with is adding those few more bubble diagrams. We also hope to come back with a final version of the architect's report. There were some questions raised, and then we have this question about, what does the rec department really need, and is that accommodated? And then really kind of get from the committee some preliminary recommendations so that we can start moving into the next phase. Things like, does the gym stay or go, and do we show a rec building, something like that. And then it's kind of that peach color. It's 5.4. What we had talked about and what's kind of scoped in the project is a select board update. And that's kind of slated right now for October 21st. And so the way this lays out is that Muck would get at their next meeting the additional bubble diagrams, have a discussion, and kind of give us some recommendations. And then I think we bring that to the select board for them to be aware of the bubble diagrams, some of the information that's going to be in the architect's report, and then make sure that everyone understands what the select board's comments and questions are. After that meeting, we would move to November, and we should be able to present three draft concept plans at the November meeting, and then come back in December and try to talk to the committee about, is there any clarity on a preferred single plan. So that's December.
Were we getting down, to a
Single
single plan?
plan.
Yeah, I didn't think we were getting down to a
I thought
single
we're
plan.
Providing 3 to the select. board.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I didn't notice that.
No December meeting.
It's not, doesn't work that way.
We can clarify that. I think in the scope we had it getting down to 1, if I'm not mistaken, but Heather and I can talk through that. Regardless, we're trying to get towards January. We have a date in mind, January 14th, where we would bring, whether it's 3 or 1, we would bring that out to the community, and that would be site plans. And we did think that even at the community meeting, it would be talking about the 3 concept plans. And if there was a preferred one, we would talk and show that. But we can revisit that. But I think the schedule stays similar. And then we get to February, where we review the comments and the input. We get to March, the committee has a meeting, and then March is a presentation to the select board of the final plan. And we thought it was 1, but it could be 3. We have to sharpen our pencil on that. We can come back in October with that refinement, but I wanted to at least get this out there while people were still in the room.
Well, the catalyst part, if we could go back to 5.4.
Oh, sorry,
In
I just
terms of
stopped.
that-
Go ahead.
Too fast, Jeff.
In terms of that catalyst report, would like to see a better defined, get rid of 6 note for the renovation. I mean, they don't have in the renovation the cost for doing a new heating system for the gym and the auditorium. So you've got a 22 million renovation cost for that building and a 27 million new build. And that's not reality. And also how you demolish all the heating system to get it out of the system, which Roby has brought up as an issue, also would be a cost. And so.
Yes, and then Sharon, just on top of that was this discussion about whether the building would need an addition to really accommodate what the rec department's talking about, storage,
Right.
office or classroom spaces. So those
Right.
would be the tasks for Catalyst to come back in October with some more clarity on that.
Can I just, I think when we had our Zoom meeting, you had talked about the price for the 27 million was for a community center. When we talked about the difference between a community center and a recreation center. The recreation center that Steve's talking about is going to be smaller and less expensive than I would think the community center, which might also have an auditorium space. It might have a lot more other multi-use rooms than would necessarily be something that would meet his needs as a recreation facility.
Okay, so we'll talk to them about that. They did acknowledge that they had a $27 million figure that could go down if it's
Right.
scaled down a little bit. So we'll talk to them about that as well and hope to come back in October with that information. And I think that'll be informative for any discussions with the select board, is to just have some of those concepts with some
Yes.
preliminary numbers
I'm-
attached to them.
I'm okay with 100,000 square feet for a regional sports facility.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the description of 22 million for a renovation.
It's not an apples to apples.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So we heard that. So that makes sense. And Heather, do you want to chime in really quick as to the scope? Where we're at? Because it moved around a little bit, and
It did move around. It looks like we're tasked with up to the 3 conceptual site plans in this contract. We had priced what it would cost to move forward with in our contract, the task 6 and 7, which was the final plan development, and then an action plan and implementation timeline. And those Bill had asked us to put off because he was looking for alternative funding through the One Stop program for that, and that was a grant application that was submitted. So Kathy is correct that it is the 3 conceptual site plans that get presented to the select board, but that's more than just the bubble diagrams. That's a much more intensive kind of design process as well. So
That you need time for.
correct.
Right.
yeah, and I think the timeline generally will stay the same. We'll work through this and provide
But
another
there's no
version of the
additional-
schedule.
Right. There's no additional cost under the contract for what you've presented here in your schedule.
He said as long as we could zoom into the meeting,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be any additional.
I don't have
Thought
any
you could
problem
absorb.
with
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
For the
So
select
we
board.
all-
Yep.
We're all set with that?
Oh, the one in October,
I'm sorry.
are you talking about zooming it, like, do we?
Yes,
where
the
do
one
we
that,
expect it
to
on
the
that?
select board
The very next meeting, we can zoom into that. We don't need to be present.
for our next meeting here.
No,
Or
this
this
pink one. Yeah.
Select board meeting.
Yeah,
That's up-
21st.
yeah,
That's
up
going
to
to
you.
this.
Oh, yeah.
And that I need to ask the TA if where
Oh,
it can
you were
be
talking
on.
about that. Sorry, I
Yeah,
thought
if
you
we
were-
can be on the agenda. It's hypothetical right now. I don't know.
Mhm.
That's the close of the warrant for special town meeting. I don't know if they have any
Mm.
extra things. It actually looked pretty light on the look ahead. But yeah. All right.
So we've done the, have you all read the minutes? I'm gonna pull the 27th. You're welcome to go, Lindsay, if you want to go.
No, I.
No. So I did transcripts and it's not a pleasant experience. And, but I'm going to do more. But I'd like to withdraw the January 27th meeting because there are too many errors in it and I want to redo it. So, November 6th, did you all read November 6th and minutes and were they okay? And someone want to make a motion to accept the November 6th minutes of 2024?
So moved.
And
Second.
Linda, second by Joe. All right, November 20th, were
You got
they?
roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would make a motion to approve the 6th, 20th, and 13th.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All right. So could I have a roll call vote? Casey?
Yep.
Joe?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
John?
Right.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Sharon, yes.
The 13th, January don't have attachments?
But
So it would-
that's something I was gonna have to do anyway with Mary Alice with all the old ones.
Typically, I would have recommended that you approve it amended to include attachments, but it's up to you guys. That's fine.
It's gonna have it via Mary Alice. She's gonna correct all the ones that don't have it.
Yes, but you approved minutes that don't include attachments. That's my point.
Okay. Well,
It's fine, whatever you guys do.
Here,
the next meeting is October 9th. I think I quickly told you of the different meetings I've gone to. And I think we are just looking for adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Well, would you second it? Because Barbara's already beat you to it.
I second it.
Thank you. All those a roll call again. Casey?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Barbara?
Yes.
John? Lindsay?
Yes.
Sharon, yes. Thank you very
you, guys.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night. Thank you all.
Good night.
I'm, and I'm gonna learn your process, so like when I'm not in the weeds with work, that I will
If you want.
follow your lead more precisely with your minute taking.
minutes
are fine. No, but I'm gonna figure out how to do it better. 'Cause,
Oh,
like even
Lindsay-
last time when I was
Oh,
like.
thank you, John.
That's all I ever do. I don't, and I was just like, I don't even, I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff.
Lindsay,
Yeah.
I have this for you.
Oops, I'm gonna stop recording. Oh.
Okay.
That's what I
Can I read
received
on
when
that?
I went to the clerk's meeting for
Okay.
that chairs.